All right, we're doing it. We're back.
Back.
In this place again.
In person.
On
live.
the internet, live. Well, as live as podcasts are. Have
Yeah.
you ever seen a live recording of a podcast?
No. Outside of this, no.
You're not missing much.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really get, as someone who talks for a living, and thank God people love showing up to listen to people talk, couldn't imagine going, I struggle with concerts, like Jay Marsh, big concert goer. Like the idea that I could listen to the thing with no people around, but I have to go to a place, wait in line.
Yeah.
The bathroom floors are sticky to listen to this.
Where was this podcast?
I'm talking more about like just concert venues in general, right? Like,
why is it so sticky?
Yeah, just in general, like the idea of going to see a live filming of a podcast.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know. So this is, by our standards, as far as like pre-recording episodes, this is a day before it launches, which is about as live as we've gotten.
Yeah.
Although we've had some down to the wire because I just took 4 months off. I was like, all right, see you guys. But yeah, so pretty much as live as can be, on site, on location, back in Toronto. Thank God.
Yeah.
I don't know. Miami's just not it.
It's a crazy place.
It's not it, man. Compared to this, like you've been to both of my places.
Yeah. This is way more chill.
This is like Bizarro World Miami.
Yeah.
Like
this is more your style.
An old building. This building creaks like I do.
What an analogy.
I'm just an old building.
Yeah.
Just brick. Just a brick. But yeah, I just got back. I'm pretty excited that first guest back is actually Canadian. I think one of the biggest guests we've had. Quite literally one of the largest human beings I think we've had.
Wow, what a feat.
Rob Hall was an early guest. I think he competed in 308 powerlifting. Marcus Leone. Honorable mention Marcus Leone for a very large human being.
Yeah,
been on the podcast.
Phil's got to be up there. Phil Smith.
Ooh, big Philly cheesesteak. Yeah, but Iain, pure muscle mass wise, Iain Valliere. I don't know who would. Well, he beat Antoine. He beat Antoine at Toronto Pro. So I think Iain would be by the numbers the biggest guest we've had, both physically and socially. Is that an acceptable term to say?
I think so. It's probably accurate.
Yeah, because he just broke some news that he's going to kind of share his insights on the podcast. He just retired from professional bodybuilding, competing in professional bodybuilding, which is like, I think, a pretty amicable thing to do. And he did it for, I don't want to say like the right reasons are for whatever reasons you do it. So it's like, we're not the judge, jury, or executioner of what the right reasons are, but the definitely reasons that resonated with me. Like most people now in the bodybuilding world are like running away from drugs are bad. You might die or have irreparable damage. But his thing was like, I'm good. Like, no doubt the health concerns were like a aspect to it, but he was really like, I still have a good bill of health and I want to do family stuff. So he kind of like one of the first bodybuilders in recent history to kind of step away on his own terms, which was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So we had a chat with him. Pretty excited to have him on. We had a couple of people in the bodybuilding world lined up, and it kind of pairs well. We don't take on sponsors ever.
Right.
Often. Ever? Really,
we have
ever.
In the past.
One.
But yeah.
And they don't pay us anymore, so we're not going to say who they are. But I enjoyed their product, but no free space, as they say. So we partner with Marek Health, and it's kind of on trend with a lot of the conversations that we're having with people. I refuse to allow it to be an age thing, although it was nice to kind of get the clean bill of health myself after being on the road for however many years consistently. So Marek Health, they help people get blood labs expediently and their results and help interpret them, which I think is a service that's in dire need. And for some reason, like I've tried to go through GPs in the past, and I don't know why it's such a pain in the ass to get like a general practitioner, like your family doctor, to write blood labs, at least in Canada anyways. Like it's a complete disaster. Now, this service is exclusive to everyone in the United States currently, but coming to Canada soon. And it was the easiest thing ever. You just went on a website, clicked a few things. The website, marekhealth.com, if I'm not mistaken. It'll be in the thing. Promo code RX'D. And yeah, you get sent an email. They send you like a questionnaire. From the questionnaire, they basically write you a lab requisition. You just go down to your local lab, and like went to like a CVS and took 10 minutes. I got a UA too, which was pretty cool, like urine analysis, which is pretty rad because that in Canada is like a nightmare to get. And yeah, you like figure your shit out. And the first thing I did was sent my stuff to James McIntosh, and yeah. So we're excited to partner with them. We're going to be kind of expanding with them, putting together like our own labs with the help of Dr. Dwayne and Phil Smith and Jay McIntosh. So keep an eye out for that. If you guys something you guys are interested in, regardless of age or activity level, I've seen some sleeper blood labs from people who thought they were healthy, and that stuff it's pretty concerning, but it's also very relieving when you know that you're on the right track. Like for me, maybe I could pull mine up, but my vitamin D, for no surprise to anyone, the guy moves to Dubai and Miami, my vitamin D tanked. I don't go outside.
Yeah.
I don't like people, and there's a lot of people outside, so I stay the fuck inside. So that was pretty interesting, like things supplementation wise and the stuff that they all help out with. So really excited for that. So if you guys are interested, and I would urge you to be interested for your own sake, not for ours, go check out Marek Health, RX'D at checkout. Let them know that we sent you. Level 1. Today.
Yeah.
Today, we have 4 lectures this semester, which is pretty exciting. So we accommodate for time zones all over the world. We had someone from Czechia come in.
Yeah.
So this is where because it used to be the Czech Republic. Did it not?
I have no idea. Not a clue.
J. Marsh?
Sounds very
No?
Eastern European though.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure Czechia used to be the Czech Republic.
Okay.
Like Prague would be in Czechia. But what happened to the Republic? Exactly. I don't know. So yeah, it's just, but no, we have 4 lectures this semester to accommodate for different time zones, everywhere from Czechia to basically all over Australia. Big Southeast Asian contingent. Shout out Singapore, Hong Kong showing up.
Yeah.
Middle East, Bahrain. We got someone from Bahrain. I think we got our first from Bahrain. I don't know. Look it up on a map. I couldn't tell you. All the way through Europe. A couple friends from Germany. Through a lot in London, a lot in the UK. But 4 lectures. So first one goes down today. So if you guys want to register, prescript.com, pre-script.com. It's on the homepage. It'll be the first link for PSL1. Registration will stay up for the next 2 weeks to allow for late registrations. So 4 lectures, 6 labs a week.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Plus the collective.
Plus free access to the collective, plus the prescript manual, 16 weeks applied biomechanics, functional anatomy course starts now, like quite literally right now. As this podcast is coming out, I'll probably be recording or streaming the first lecture. If you miss the lectures go up in your portal. You can watch them later and forever, so you have access to it forever as a reference. And other than that, I think that's it. Iain Valliere. It wasn't until I Google searched him to do some background that I realized that his name, because when you search Iain on Instagram, he phonetically has his name written in the caption. So he has like the way his name is written on his passport, and it's Iain. But like, when you read stuff that has purposeful spelling mistakes and you read it normally because your brain just like registers like the first couple words or whatever, first couple letters. That's what I did to his name forever. And I was always like, why does he have the phonetic? Because he would write like, in quotes, it's probably still there, E, like the letter E, like pronounced E-in, like Ian. Like, and I was like, man, does he think his followers are like really dumb? Like, and then I finally Google searched and Google was like, did you mean Iain Valliere spelled I-A-I-N? I was like, I don't think so. Like, I think it's, and then I was like, oh wait, this whole time his name was spelled I-A-I-N. But yeah, Iain Valliere, Canada's most winningest bodybuilder, top contender, Olympia, second place in the Arnold Classic, if I'm not mistaken, and decided to step away from the game. So we chat about his reasons why, what he has next. You're not going to believe what activity he's chosen to pursue as a bodybuilder. It would basically be the thing that he's least, or most bodybuilders would be least adept at getting into, and he's decided to get into it, so we talk about that. Yeah, great episode. I appreciate him coming on. Guys, if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at RX'D Radio on Instagram, at Red, White, and Jordan, white spelled incorrectly, W-I-T-E.
Correct.
At the _muscle_doc. Episode 418. Wow. Okay, we did it. Lundy, hit it.
You're tuned in to RX Radio.
You know, I got to the point where I was more excited to do other things than I was bodybuild, you know?
When you started, like, did you have an exit strategy? When you got into bodybuilding, like, I think like the incentive structure would have been different. Like, cause you had an early start by most pro standards, right? Like 18
Sure.
years old is like fucking early to get into this stuff. Did you
Yeah.
have an exit strategy going in, or did it just sort of like, just like
No, I mean, like obviously when you're young and you're starting getting into bodybuilding, it's not like the first thing on your mind, you know, like you're thinking like at that time I was actually in college, and I actually left college to pursue bodybuilding. So like, obviously at that time, the extra strategy was like the last thing I was thinking. I'm like, I just want to pour everything into this. You know, I'm one of those guys where I'm very all or nothing. And if I'm doing something, I'm doing that. And I'm doing like 120%. You know, so at the time it wasn't really like something at the front of my mind. Obviously, as you get older, you know, and you have more responsibilities in life, you know, when you're 18, like I was still living at home, like I didn't have responsibilities, you know, I was just bodybuilding and just doing my thing and trying to be bigger and trying to be better, you know, and with no real responsibilities or like long-term look at life at that point, you know, everything was very like this year, that year, you know, the next step, you know, but obviously as you get older, you know, the future becomes, you know, more prevalent a thought in your mind, you know, and future from a multitude of ways, you know, future of like, what's my quality of life going to look like after bodybuilding? You know, what kind of things do I want to do after bodybuilding from a enjoyment standpoint? You know, so yeah, it wasn't definitely on the forefront of my mind, but yeah, as I got older, for sure, I thought about it, you know, and definitely in the later years, especially once Melissa and I got married and, you know, you get to the point where other people rely on you and other people count on you. And, you know, when kids become part of the discussion, then of course your future and things you want to do in your exit strategy for bodybuilding becomes more and more of a thought. But in my younger years, getting into bodybuilding, absolutely not. No.
like, what was the initial like incentive? Because I feel I mean, we're around the same age. I think I might be like 1 year older than you. I mean, I started training and it's the old man speech now, eh? Like, but I did this before the internet, like, you know, there was no, and it was true. Yeah, I mean, all I was trying to do was make sure that Fuad didn't throw weights at me in the corner of the gym. Like, I was just like hiding with a hoodie on. And
Sure,
but like there was no incentive other than just doing it. Like now I mean, kind of my concern is, and I'm curious of your thoughts, the incentive structure around bodybuilding and the lifestyle and everything that comes with it. It seems like it's totally different, for better or for worse. It's brought more people into the sport, but like the incentive structure before was, you know, the passion of pursuing what, getting bigger, stronger, faster. Yeah. Simple as that, right? And because there wasn't this exogenous dopamine hit of likes and shares and all that. Like, are you, how do I say worried, but like with the new incentive structure around bodybuilding, like, is there at all a concern that, so I'm kind of leading to somewhere. Do you know what, like, there's this concept of like the deal with the devil, right? And there's a sports study back in like the 80s where I think they surveyed 198 different world-class athletes and said, if you could take a drug that guaranteed you to win, but the side effect of that drug was you would be dead within 5 years, would you take the drug? And it was like everything, like whatever you competed in. And it's funny, back in the 80s that they included this. And the study specifically said, from a decathlon to the Mr. Universe, everything you competed in, you'd win, but you'd be dead within 5 years. And of that 198 people they studied, 52% said yes. 52% said, yes, I would take a drug knowing willingly. I think it's called like what is it? It's the deal with the devil has like a technical term to it, but it gives this kind of clear outline of like, hey, if you do this, you'll win, but you'll die. Right. I feel like with the incentive structure in bodybuilding now, that number is as high as ever.
Oh, I would definitely agree. And, you know, it's exactly like you said. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, the incentive and I think the root cause of why people get into this sport in the first place has dramatically changed even in, you know, the 15 years that I've been bodybuilding. Like you said, when we started, you know, it was strictly for the love of lifting weights, you know, making our own progressing in your lifts, getting stronger, getting bigger. You know, like for me, when I started, I was a huge fan of Maurice Pujanowski, who was like the world's strongest man at the time. But he was the world's strongest man who looked like a bodybuilder. He wasn't like the guys that from that year, and, a lot of guys now that were 6'9", 400 pounds, he had like tight abs, like good musculature. He was very fast, but he was still killing everybody on the heavy lifts too. And that's, when I looked at that, I'm like, this is what I want to be. I want to be big as fuck. I want to be strong as shit. And I was doing it for nobody other than myself, and for what I wanted to feel and what I wanted to, feel pushing myself in the gym, and achieving those goals. And, I came from a history of track, and I know what that feeling of, that feeling of gratification that you get for pushing yourself to the limit and seeing the exact response. And I think that's something that's drawn me towards, individual sports like bodybuilding or track, is you're like completely the master of your own destiny. Like, it's different when you look at team sports. Obviously there's different aspects that I think people drawn to there, like the team camaraderie. And obviously, you play important roles within that team. But when you talk about these individual pursuits, you get exactly what you put in, and that's what really, really drew me to this in the first place. Obviously when you fast forward to today, or even, right when I was starting to be a pro, and my first few years as a pro, when, you get the injection of social media, I think that dramatically changed people's reasoning for starting these things, and people's, like you said, kind of that dopamine hit of like the likes and shares and stuff like that. I think you get a lot of people, and we've talked about this on the podcast with Fuad. I think a lot of people start it for the wrong reasons. They're starting it because they see other people getting fame and fortune from bodybuilding or from fitness pursuits, and they don't actually love training or the individual pursuit that comes along with it in its core, like a lot of guys used to. So yeah, I definitely think it's changed. For better or worse. I mean, it's hard to say. I think better in the sense that there's more opportunities from a financial standpoint, obviously with the with social media being there, but from a negative standpoint, in that I think there's a lot of people doing it for reasons that aren't really true to themselves.
Was there ever a point, because like, I mean, this is true in bodybuilding and even life in general, like it's so hard, and it's not for everyone, like it's obviously case by case, but like I find it difficult to communicate with younger kids because it's like they didn't really develop or have the opportunity to develop a personality before the internet. Like, yeah. I remember getting my first computer, like let alone the internet and Facebook and MySpace or like whatever the fuck, right? Like I remember getting my first computer. I was like mom's on the dial up with grandma and I can't finish my whatever. Like that's I grew up. Yeah. I mean, MSN was like it. You had to if the girl liked you, you had to log in and log out to get her attention a bunch of times. Pulled that trick.
Yeah.
But it was there a point as the injection kind of, as you mentioned, of notoriety and fame through socials, was there a point where you noticed that maybe pressure at all as you came through your career? Starting at 18 would have been a bit of a blessing because social media wasn't really injected.
Sure.
That would have been 2010. Is that,
it was
is that around the right time?
Instagram was 2012. Facebook was obviously before that, but I mean, there wasn't the capabilities that there is now with stories and videos and stuff like this. You were just putting pictures up and it was very simple, no messenger base on it. It was a lot simpler. Yeah, I mean, there was obviously a change. But I think, like you said, because I started before that and because I developed a personality outside of the personality that I was trying to create on social media, it did a lot for me. And I think that's one of the reasons why people are drawn to me in this world, aside from bodybuilding, is my personality, and I think that's one of the things that kind of stays with you after bodybuilding. But I got into it and got to a point where I was already a pro and that was becoming prevalent. So I really just looked at it as this is a tool I can utilize and just be my authentic self in it. And sure, over times throughout the year, did I struggle with, being as authentic as I could, but, also fighting maybe backlash for being authentic. And trying to be true to myself and say what I want to say, because obviously you're going to get more backlash on that kind of stuff versus if you just say what people want to hear, But, I think I used it and I evolved with it. So I kind of came into it and kind of learned to grow into it and use it to my advantage in the terms of the way in gaining sponsors and getting myself out there more, doing more podcasts, those kind of things, using it as a tool. But at the same time, I think it's very important to remain true to who you are and who you want people to see. And I think that goes a long way for sure. Yeah.
Was there ever a point in your career, like when you start winning pro shows and, you start breaking the internet with some of like your check-in photos, and was there ever a point where like that Faustian bargain, that deal with the devil, like, you mentioned health as kind of the secondary reason, a distant second, as you have a clean bill of health. Was there ever a point where you're like, I can make a drastic move by doing X, Y, or Z? Maybe it's doing like multiple shows back to back. Or have you ever had a point where you were of the mindset of that 52% of like, hey, I'm gonna take this compromised position to potentially win?
Yeah, I've really tried not to. I mean, I'd be lying if say like, obviously you get a post that goes a little viral, you put a progress picture up and it's getting more likes than ever, and you feel that dopamine hit, and you're like, shit, this feels good. Like, what can I do to get more of this? But it's one of those things that I think, you really just need to look at it as the tool that it is. And I really tried to stay clear. And I think one of the big things for that is obviously having good people that surround you, having my wife, having my family, having her brother, Chris, people that stayed very true to themselves throughout their careers and throughout their lives, but use these things to the maximum advantage that they could, without altering their character in the meantime,
Yeah, because that's it's an interesting tailwind that you leave, right? Like you bring up the concerns, and it's the elephant in the room with bodybuilding, and it probably always has been. So you bring up and I don't want to harp on the health concern side of things, but with Chris still actively competing, because you guys have kind of created like this Canadian royal family of bodybuilding.
Sure.
I have a question I want to ask a little bit later, because like I have an older sister and I'm protective.
Sure.
But I'm in the fortunate situation that you never dated her. So any guy who walked in the front door, I was just like, hey, is it Iain Valliere? Nope. All right. What are your intentions with my sister, sir? What was it? Just a complete aside. What did you know Chris before? Like, what was that interaction? Like, did Chris try to like strong arm you and then realize like, oh shit, this guy's huge?
Well, I think people have to remember, like when I met Melissa, Chris was in like grade 10, 11, like he was a kid. I've been with Melissa since like mid 2012, and Chris is 5 years younger than Melissa and I. So, he was like a young kid, and he was really just starting to get passionate about weightlifting. So for him, like, he's like, this is fucking cool. Like the big guy in town is hanging out with my sister, So for him, it was like a cool thing. And that was something that we really bonded over versus him, like he got more protective maybe as he got older, but at that point she's like in her early 20s and he's still a little kid in high school, so that dynamic quite hadn't developed to the same level maybe as people get older. But no, I met Melissa first. Melissa and I actually went to high school together, graduated the same year, and Chris actually went to a different high school because they moved from a different part of town. So they kind of had their pick of the litter on schools, and a lot of his friends went to this other school and hers went to the one we went to. So they actually went to different high schools. So Melissa and I graduated the same year. So we were out of high school a year or two when I met Chris. But Melissa and I went to high school together. Didn't really know each other in high school. We didn't go to a huge high school or anything, but we were in very different social circles. I was like, doing mediocre in school and like smoking cigarettes between classes and just like trying to be cool.
Shut the fuck up.
Like not to that extent, but like I was more in that crowd, versus like a jock kind of athlete, bad kid kind of, group. Where Melissa was a little more studious, had a very small group of friends that she kind of continued with throughout high school. So we reconnected connected through a mutual friend a few years after high school. But yeah, at that point, Chris was a young kid. So, I think it was more cool for him, like I said, that, at that point I just started to get into bodybuilding because it was 2012. I did my first show in 2009-10. So I'd already won like a junior national championship in bodybuilding at that point. And I was like, known around like where we live. Like I was like the biggest guy around here for sure, especially in that kind of age bracket. So, to him as a guy that was just starting in his kind of bodybuilding pursuit, for him, it was like, fuck, this is awesome. I'm going to pick this guy's brain, so it was really cool at first for sure.
So what I'm hearing is that you're responsible for Chris Bumstead. So a massive debt of gratitude is you heard it here first, Chris.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
That's.
I don't look. I think Chris would have ended up where he ended up. I'm very happy and proud of the role that I got to play in that. And I think I did my absolute best in those formative years to kind of steer him down the right path and kind of help him, you know. And I think he spoke on this too. And just, you know, seeing my level of work ethic, I think really set the foundation for him of like, okay, this is what it takes to be a bodybuilder. You know, like I said from the beginning, I've always been like 100% in. Even since I started bodybuilding, I wasn't someone that was like, eat my 6 meals a day, and then like on the weekends I'd be like getting drunk and eating 3 meals and, you know, dicking off. Like once I committed to bodybuilding, I was like 120%. I mean, I could probably count in the last 15 years how many meals I've missed on one hand, you know? So to Chris, he saw this and he was kind of like, okay, this is bodybuilding. He'd seen nothing else. So he just followed exactly what I did in that essence, you know? And I think in terms of that framework of, you know, intensity in the gym, you know, consistency and dedication to your diet and nutrition, supplementation, all of that kind of things. I think I tried to play the best positive, impactful role that I could. So yeah, no, I think Chris is Chris, and he's an anomaly. And I think he was already starting down that path. But if I had, you know, any positive impact that kind of steered him down that course, maybe a little faster, a little safer, whatever it may be, I'm glad to take any credit for that.
Good. You know what? Credit where credit's due. You
it.
mentioned like the family is like a big part of the decision to, like, you know, it sounded like you consulted a lot with like the family
Sure.
about making the decision to step away. And you obviously have like a close group, like a tight knit within bodybuilding
Absolutely,
itself, especially like with the podcast with Fuad, Paul, and
Yep.
Mike. Was there a piece of advice or I don't know, maybe warning or trepidation or anything that like in the conversations you had with the people close to you that knew before like the world knew, that like surprised you, or maybe things you didn't consider before making the decision that kind of made you step back and be like, is this the right time? Is this the right move?
Not really. I mean, honestly, it was, you know, I think the people close to me kind of could feel that this was something that had kind of been building and coming. You know, I have to give to Fuad. He was probably the one, as someone who freaking flies me. You know, he had stepped out of bodybuilding and not really on his own terms. You know, it was kind of where his body was getting to that point where it couldn't perform the same and look the same. So he just wanted to maybe reaffirm with me that I wasn't making the decision out of fear in that aspect. Like, you know, that I was maybe regressing in my competitive prowess. You know, that was a fear in my mind, not saying that he thought that was true, because he was saying the opposite. He's like, dude, if this is what you're thinking, he's like, think about it. But when I explained my reasonings to him, he completely understood. And he was like, honestly, very excited and very happy for me that I made the decision on my own terms. And that I was coming, it wasn't like something that I felt like I was like mourning a loss. It was more like an excitement of the next phase of life. You know, I've done the same thing for a decade and a half. I've literally lived a complete like one track life since I was 18, you know? So like just when I was coming into adulthood, this is all I've done every day for that entire time period, you know? So it came to a point where I was just like, the scale of excitement of new pursuits and new goals in bodybuilding was completely overweighed by the excitement to do other things in life while I was still young and still capable. You know, there's one thing to be said. It's like, okay, you walk out of bodybuilding at 40 years old. And even if it's your own choice, let's say, and your health is good, you know, your physicality isn't the same, you know, and I wanted to be at a point where I can still try other things, where my body is still at a point where I can perform at a high level. You know, if I want to get back and, you know, run fast or, you know, do powerlifting or whatever it is, you know, if I want to go fucking do jiu-jitsu, I mean, I don't give a shit, but my body is still at a point where it's healthy. My joints are good. My internal health is good. You know, I think the one thing that wasn't good was my mind, and my mind just wasn't 100% locked into wanting to be the best bodybuilder I could be anymore. It was locked into like, what else does life have to offer? And I still want to be able to pursue it when I'm young and excited. And before I have children, you know, start to get down that road and also have children. You know, these are things that are all on my mind. So, you know, it was an overwhelming excitement away from bodybuilding into pursuing other things. Yeah.
I know Paulie and Fuad recently mentioned they had started a bit of mixed martial arts training in the geriatrics class out there at Central Strength or Central Combat Sports.
Paul teared his pec on day 2.
Did he actually? Oh,
horseback
Paulie.
racing.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I was going to say of that sounds like a good pursuit. Like, I want to be part of the ground floor promotion of like the three of you in some sort of cage match. My money's on you as far as taking Fuad and Paulie down. How much do you think the role of social media and like the usefulness of it as a tool potentially made stepping down from bodybuilding a little bit easier, like, because you can still stay connected, where originally, like when you started, you're either competing or you're not. That's the defining characteristic of a bodybuilder, where like now it's, the archived legacy of what you've done in the sport is a click away. Do you feel like that made it easier?
That's a great question. I mean, and 100% it did. And it goes two ways. Obviously, there's the one side that makes you a little more fearful because there's a lot more eyes on it and they're going to be judging your decision. But then there's the other side on it that is, I've built this name for myself. I've built this reputation for myself. Like you said, I have this history of my career, as one of the top bodybuilders in Canada ever. That has opened a lot of doors for me. Whatever pursuit I felt I wanted to do, in this fitness world or, in the surrounding world, those doors felt very open for me. And yeah, social media is a big part of that. Obviously, when you have a following that's developed, and you have this platform, and a lot of people that can see you, there's still so many things you can do, in terms of, being available for sponsors or being available to provide your own content or things that can, still be monetized after just being a bodybuilder going on stage, So, interestingly enough, I mean, even, I was joking about this the other day with Fuad and them that since I announced my, departure from the stage, like my Instagram and like analytics from that, like my engagement's up like almost 95%, So it's like, it's not like it's the other way. It's one of those fears. Like, I'm going to retire. Nobody's going to care about me because I'm not competing anymore. But the response has actually been quite the contrary. It's been a lot of people, like out of the thousands of messages and DMs and comments that I had, regarding it, I might have had like 3 that were like troll accounts being like pussy, but the rest were all completely supportive. Completely supportive, very excited to see what I do next, excited to see me do other things in this industry that people think I could be good about, whether it's judging or commentating, other things in the world of bodybuilding that I think people would be really interested to me to see, and then also, like I said, I'm still a young, healthy athlete, like for those people to see what can this guy do if he dumps that same kind of, physicality into something else when his body can still allow it. And I think for a lot of people, there becomes a lot more relatability there, because let's be serious, like a top 10 Olympian is not very relatable to most people. Like me eating 6 meals a day, every single day of the year, being never missing a training session. There's very few people that are that into bodybuilding, The majority of people are trying to balance maybe being a bit athletic with trying to have some muscle and be strong. They're still in school and they're trying to balance how to eat. But they can't get in their 6 meals a day. It's tough for them with their schedule. So I think me now actually stepping away from the stage has given a lot more relatability to me, which I think a lot of people are excited and have connected with me on that standpoint as, not just the bodybuilder. I think they came because I was a bodybuilder. They stayed because they enjoyed me as a person and a personality. And then then that interest will carry over into whatever pursuits I decide to do afterwards.
Well, it's funny you use the word personality, because like in doing a bit of background for this, and like I obviously followed you for a really long time being a Canadian myself. Sure. The internet, you don't realize how ready the internet was for you to step away, because when you Google search your name, and I did a side by side because I was trying to figure out the age difference between you and Chris, and kind of that whole story of like you walking in the house and Chris being whatever. Yeah. Under Chris's name, it says professional bodybuilder. Have you? You obviously haven't, and if you have,
does it say retired professional bodybuilder?
No. Google search it right now and see what comes up. If you're in front of your computer, we'll take the time, because I thought it's so interesting that you use the word personality, because I expected, because I was, like I said, doing a bit of research.
Internet and Google personality.
You made it, dog. You made it, homie. That's it. It's like, wow. I mean,
that's so funny. Yeah. Chris Bumstead.
I'm so curious of what if you Google search Paul Lozon.
Yeah, and Chris Bumstead. Chris Bumstead, Canadian bodybuilder. So they were all.
Well, you know what he's not? He's not a personality. I thought that was so funny. I was like, man, is this guy like editing his own Wikipedia page? This guy's on the move.
20 million Instagram followers and he's not a personality, but you know, it's okay.
That's wild, man. Has there been a thing like, I mean, I would, it's funny that this was one of the first things that came to mind, and maybe it was like just a side effect of growing up in Windsor, but you mentioned like this scene getting home from the gym, and it was during the end of the Era video with you and Melissa, and she kind of had this moment of like, it was like a what do I do moment. And the only thing, like, you just finished training, you came home, and it was like, do I eat? What do I do? Yeah. And it reminded me of my friends who have like gotten out of prison. There was like this institutionalization of like, can I go to the 100%. Bathroom? It's like, dog, you don't have to ask. What have been like the surprising moments where you've stopped and just been like, you know, what do I do?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of overwhelming at first, like, you know, moments like that where it says like, especially the first few days, because I'm like, I was so used to eating on a set schedule, set meals, and I'm like, do I have to, like, even if I'm not eating on a set schedule, do I still have to weigh my meals? Like, you know, do I need to know exactly what I'm eating? If I'm eating even 3 meals a day versus 6, do I have to put it on the scale? Like, you know, there was a few days where it was like, it was kind of a transition where the first few days it's like, you know, I kind of cut it down and ate when I was hungry, but I was still weighing them. And then the next day it's like, okay, I was only weighing like, you know, my meals that were like chicken and ricey kind of meals, but like I had a few others that weren't, you know, and then now I'm just, you know, really obviously eating a little more intuitively. But in that same breath, I've been eating bodybuilder meals for 15 years. I kind of know what is what. Like I can look at a piece of chicken and be like, this is not enough, or this is enough, or, you know, I can probably ballpark within 10, 15 grams what 250 grams of chicken is, you know, but yeah, I mean, there's a sense of freedom to that. And not that I didn't enjoy my time at bodybuilder. I loved structure, and I loved that, you know, knowing the work I was putting in with that level of consistency with my food and my training was rendering something on the back end in terms of the progress. And there was a very high level of fulfillment with that, you know, which I think bodybuilding gives you more than anything, because it is such a all-consuming 24-hour pursuit where every meal you eat, every day you sleep, every training session you have is having an impact on how you're going to look on stage in 6 months, a year, 2 years, you know? So yeah, there was the immediate relief of like, hey, I'm just going to eat when I'm hungry. And if I'm feeling like I trained and I'm like a little depleted, okay, I'll eat a little more, you know? And then the training, you know, it was honestly very nice to just go in the gym and just do what felt good, and like just do what I wanted, and just like get a pump and like not try and absolutely obliterate myself. And not saying I don't love to train hard, I do, but after you've been doing that, you know, on such a concrete schedule with like, you know, a very specific split based to your goals, to just like go in the gym and I'm like, I feel like fucking flat benching today. I haven't flat benched in 15 years. Let's give her, you know? I went and did a 5x5 on flat bench the other day. Like I haven't flat benched in 5 years, let alone do 5 reps on bench, you know? So there's obviously like a level of, you know, reignition of excitement to train again, because you can kind of do what you like and what feels good, and also do new things that are progressing you towards new goals that aren't just the same goals I've had for a decade and a half, right?
So a close friend of mine, Killian Hamilton, always reminds me of this quote from this philosopher, his author Kierkegaard, and it's anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Has there been a flip side of the coin? Like you have this ultimate freedom. You have, you've mentioned a few things you want to pursue, but those are not as concise and time constrained as the goals that you've been following. Has there been any anxiety of like, oh, wait, yeah, this is great. I can have Doritos and I don't have to eat when I'm fucking full, but I like eating when I'm full and I like depriving myself of Doritos. Has there been any anxiety from the freedom of like, I can do whatever I want? Okay, what do I do?
Yeah, yes and no. As I'd say as a whole, no. And I think that's a telltale sign that I was very ready to move on to other things. But I have to say the first day I went to the grocery store after making it was like very overwhelming. I'm like, I don't know what to buy. What do I eat? Like, do I keep eating the same foods? Like, I can buy anything here. Like, you know, obviously especially with, you know, the goal of, you know, being a little smaller, a little more athletic, and obviously having a, you know, goal of optimizing my longevity and my quality of life. You know, I still want to eat well. You know, I want to eat as good as possible. But there's like this whole new broad world of like, well, I can make a fucking chicken wrap, or I can eat Greek yogurt with berries in it if I feel 5 times a day. Like, you know, so it was very overwhelming the first time I went. until I kind of got a feel for like how much I want to eat or what kind of foods I liked, outside of just like steak and potatoes, chicken and rice, fish and rice, oats and egg whites, and after I kind of got a feel for that over the week, then it was great. I kind of found the foods that I liked and that I found I was eating consistently and enjoying. But hey, when I don't enjoy them in a month from now, I'll just get other shit. It's great,
I don't know why. Have you seen the movie Elf, the Christmas movie with Will Ferrell?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So like he like leaves the North Pole and ends up in New York City. First, I don't know why. When I was watching the video and like you were talking about some of like like going up the escalator at the grocery store and like one leg is just staying on the ground. Like how the fuck does this thing work? Or like your first meal is like pasta and maple syrup and M&Ms or whatever. Like, am I doing the normal people thing?
My first meal actually was pasta. Melissa made like a nice homemade pasta, with like a good red sauce and stuff, and it was like that was like the first one I had, and there was no protein in it, zero protein, just pasta
for the first time in 18 years.
Yeah, I hadn't had a meal that was predominantly protein based in a long, long time, other than the odd times I've gone out to restaurants in the off season or whatever, But yeah, it's a very freeing feeling, But there obviously is an adjustment when you've done one thing for so long. But like I said, I think that was kind of the telltale sign that I was ready to move on to other things, because there wasn't a lot of fear and anxiety that came after I made the decision. It was more like excitement and optimism and enjoyment,
Was any like let's see, in bodybuilding, Kevin Levrone, in other sports, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, there's a thing with people, it seems like high performers, where they just can't stay away, right? Like obviously MJ retired and came back with the Wizards, and then Kevin Levrone came back and like did a show and was like, okay, you still look sick, you're nuts, but you're okay, Ronnie's off the stage now, you're back, like what the fuck? Or have you at all considered the backslide potentially? Like, I'm sure when Michael retired, I'm sure when Brady retired, I'm sure when Kevin stepped off the stage, they're like, that door on that chapter of my life is closed. And then all of a sudden something happened. And then you saw them back on the field, you saw them back on the stage.
Yeah, look, I can never say never. It's impossible to know how I'll feel in 1 year, 5 years, 6 years, whatever. It's absolutely not something I'm thinking about now. And I think with the goals in the fitness world and the pursuits that I'm interested in now, it'll probably drive me more away from bodybuilding in wanting to do it for myself, not in terms of my involvement with the industry as a whole, or, look, I'm still going to go to every damn Olympia every year and go to the Arnold and, partake in all these events that I'm honestly so much more excited to partake in as a fan and a spectator than I was feeling to be a competitor at. I haven't watched Chris actually be on stage since like 2017 or something, because our schedules with Classic and Men's Open are different. So he'd be going on stage, when I was kind of like resting for the next morning's prejudging. So I was sitting in my hotel or my Airbnb watching him on the live stream every year. So, just things like that where I can be there, as his brother and be there as a supporter and be backstage and help him pump up and make sure he looks good and be there with Hani, kind of his moral support, those things are very, very exciting to me, But no, in terms of like getting back on stage, I don't see it happening. But like I said, you can never say never. Maybe we'll get me out there in the Masters Olympia in 7 years or something. But it's definitely not on my radar, because like I said, there's other things which kind of are tailored towards getting a little smaller and a little more athletic and downsizing that interest me at this time. So I think I'll get to a point where I'm so invested in that bodybuilding world, in terms of my own physique, getting back to that won't really interest me anymore. So, but never say never, but definitely not on my mind now.
You kind of prioritize, family first lifestyle, starting your own family, being able to, spend time with people that you otherwise haven't. You mentioned you can't go snowboarding because if you tear an ACL, there goes your livelihood. Then you mentioned like the health side and the general concerns of bodybuilding at large. Did at any point like the thought of legacy come into your head? Like this idea, like, I don't know if you're familiar with like the samurai code of like the harikari, which is like, you would rather fall on your own sword and rather than kind of fall to the hands of your enemies. Like you're at this point where, you would be in a position, and I've heard this cited a few times. I've heard you talk about this idea, like you're going out on your own terms, which you're not being forced out. Like everyone, I'm sure at a certain point, like you kind of recap your convo with Fuad, and it's just like everyone is saying like, look, man, like you easy first call out Olympia, like you're still in the mix. At any point in making the decision, did you think about the legacy that your decision would leave in bodybuilding, as you are probably the largest name that's stepping away in what could be looked at the prime of the career? Any thoughts on that, or has that crossed your mind at all?
Not maybe in that direct sense. I think because of what I have accomplished, it did put an ease and a level of comfort about stepping away. Like I'm proud of what I've accomplished. I am the most winningest. I mean, from a analytical standpoint, I am the best Canadian open bodybuilder there ever was. So in terms of a legacy, even if someone is to surpass that at some point, I'm still always in that conversation. Just like even now, we can talk from the 90s and someone like Paul Dillett. He's still talked about now in terms of being one of the greatest Canadian bodybuilders, or guys like Fuad or Ben Pakulski. Even though they've been away from the stage for a long time, these are still guys that we remember and talk about in that conversation. And I think I've absolutely cemented myself into that conversation for a long time to come. So, I was very comfortable in that piece with what I'd accomplished. I've won 6 shows. I've been, at the top 10 at Olympia a handful of times. I've been second at the Arnold. So I was very, comfortable with what I'd accomplished. And the idea of accomplishing more didn't make me as excited, like I said before, as trying and doing other things,
Now you kind of used that a few times, the trying and doing other things. What are the other things? Like, I don't want to say my concern, but I don't want to say people of high performers, regardless of what they do, tend to get that fixation of like, oh, I'm going to do this for how long? Like 18 years. I'm going to do this for like 18 years. What's like, you're not going to like the idea that you're just going to dabble in something, to me as an outsider watching your career.
Yeah.
What is the swan dive into the deep end of the next thing of your life? Like, it sounds like you've already put some thought into like, this is the next activity.
I've already started. Yeah.
Don't say
running. I don't know how crazy this seems. But my goal is, as I said, when I was younger, I ran track.
Oh.
I ran 1-200, did long jump. So my goal is to be able to get back to run an 11-second 100-meter.
Okay, we're gonna talk off air about the hamstrings and how we'll get you there, because you thought Paulie's pack was bad with jiu-jitsu on day 2.
Yeah.
I can imagine you getting a couple A skips in, and all of a sudden, like, oh god.
Yeah.
So so I've been already
back with the club that I ran with in high school. There's a very good club here in Ottawa that is one of the best clubs in North America, called the Ottawa Lions. That I ran with and did club track and trained with when I was in my high school years. So I've already reconnected back with them. A lot of the guys that I ran with back then are coaching now, and a lot of the same coaching staff is there. So I'm very familiar with the people in the area. So it's not like I was stepping into like a world of like, I don't know anybody here. So there was a level of comfort there. So I've already been back there for 2 practices, 2-hour track practices I've already done. So it was humbling to say the least.
Sore.
Honestly, I actually felt really good. I made sure before I started, I bought like the absolute best pair of running shoes money could buy. Because I'm like, if my ankles and feet and knees are going to be even remotely saved here, I know a good pair of shoes is going to go a long way. So honestly, after 2 hours of good running and drills and technical stuff, the only thing that was a little sore and more from tightness was just my hips and my lower back. And that's just because my knees haven't been put that high in that kind of range of motion in a long time. But my knees and ankles and feet and everything like that felt 120% fine. No pain whatsoever there. Body feels good and ready to progress for sure. Yeah.
Are you starting to feel the structure build around the new goal yet? Like, are you starting to see you mentioned like, hey, I had pasta for dinner once. I was like, oh yeah, you made it, man. You're out of the game. And all of a sudden it's like, well, I got tempos tomorrow. So I don't know, maybe I should have have you already started to conform habits?
Yeah. I mean, not super strict, but like, obviously I do have a lot of knowledge and expertise around training and like eating for performance. So obviously that comes in handy. I'm not being so strict. Like, I'm still eating very well, but do I know, okay, have certain things around my training is going to help me a little bit? Sure. And I'm implementing those. But no, I mean, I've already, back to that. So I'm going to be there twice a week for the next while until I feel like I can kind of up my volume with that. But this group to get together 4 days a week, I'm obviously not ready to do 4 days a week of running training. And then I've already been in contact with a guy named Justin King that was Arizona based, which focuses on, speed and strength performance and stuff like that, works with sprinters and, football players, NFL players, basketball players, volleyball players, stuff like that, in terms of doing their gym training for things around this kind of world. So we've already been in contact, and I'm actually going to Florida to do some stuff with Ron Revive and to see Chris on the 26th of this month. So next week. So he's going to fly out and do all his assessment on me in person in Florida. So we already talked. He's coming out on the Thursday there. So instead of me sending a million videos for assessment to kind of base all my programming on, he's going to come out and do it all in person. But obviously, yes, his apprehensions were the same as yours. And like, hey, I think you can do this, but you need to be very, very careful. Injuries are obviously going to be the biggest thing we got to watch out for. And that's really why I think he wanted to get in contact with me soon and get programming started to mitigate injury, obviously, to the best that he can, but also allow me to still kind of progress my goals, right?
So the initial benchmark is the 11-second 100.
Yeah.
Now, is there ever going to be a competitive like, am I going to go down to like the U of T track on some like weekend event and see like top heat 6 lane Valliere, Iain? Like, is it good? Are you going to be competitive with it, or have you thought that far ahead?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it would start with, here at that club they do during the summer and in the winter as well. They do, indoor distances like 60 meter, 150, 300, that kind of stuff. But they have like exhibition meets throughout the summer every Wednesday at this track where you can kind of go enter yourself by like your seed time, what you expect to run, and they kind of put the seed time. So obviously they're not going to have a guy that runs a 15-second 100 meter with like one of the guys from the Canadian national team running like a 10-2, so you go in, enter by seed time, which I actually ran one of these in 2015 when I was a pro already at like 260. I went and ran like in my spikes, in my tights, a full 100 meter. I did a 100 meter with one of my buddies I used to run track with. And then me and Chris actually ran a 60 on the track in one of those meets as well. So it's been a long time since I've run a full out 100. I guess 2015 would have been the last one. But yeah, I mean, would I like to get back to the point where I could be competitive? Like I'm not, obviously I know I'm too old to be, and I don't think I'm good enough to be getting to the point where I'm running at the fucking Pan Am Games or something. I mean, that's not my goal at all. But would I like to get back to the point where I can be competitive with people kind of in my age bracket at, the national level or provincial level or whatever it may be? Absolutely. I think that's more than realistic. I think I could definitely get faster than I was when I was in high school. I think with the knowledge I've accrued and my ability to train, and obviously the time and freedom and stuff that I have now, and the financial ability, I think opens up a lot of doors for you to, really pursue an endeavor like this at a higher level,
Okay. So I got men's final 100 meter heat. Lane 1, representing Windsor, Ontario, Fouad Abiad. Lane 2, Paul Lozon. Lane 3, Iain Valliere, stay with me. Lane 4, Mike Van Wyck. Lane 5, Chris Bumstead. Give me the podium finish. Give me first to fifth. Rank order that for me of who's coming dead last, who's coming first, and how does the middle field pan out?
Okay, well, since I beat Chris in the last time we raced, when we were both already bodybuilders, I have to put myself in first, especially if I'm going to be doing some training. I would put Chris in a very clear second. I think it would be kind of like me and Chris, and then like 7 seconds later, you had everybody else. Because I'm not sure Paul or Fouad, and certainly not Mike, can run very fast. I think Mike's got like fake hips and shit, and he's like 315 pounds. So I don't see Mike moving anywhere too fast, and I think he'd be the first one to say that. But I don't know. I don't see Paul running too fast either. So I'd probably go me, Chris, Fouad, Paul, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I think the Paul Fouad would be neck and neck just because they're so goddamn competitive with one another. I think
Fouad, if he actually tried, could probably run reasonably fast. I feel like Paul is just like one of those like uncoordinated flat foot like behemoths that just can't run fast to save his life.
I'm glad we got that. I'm glad we got that on record. I'll be sure to get this clip to Paulie as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Hey man, I appreciate you taking the time. I really,
For sure, man.
I was excited not only for you, obviously like on the personal side, like pursuing a life outside of bodybuilding, but I think the legacy piece, whether you know it or not, I think putting like the family and lifestyle first will be something that, and I'm sure you're not the first bodybuilder to do it, but you're definitely the biggest name to do it, the most successful to do it. Seeing issues that we've seen in the health world in general, especially as it intersects with bodybuilding, like the prioritization and having an identity not as a bodybuilder, but as an internet personality, as Google has now identified
Internet
for
personality.
you. I think it's a big step, man, and I think it means a lot for someone. And for me, I'm proud that it came from a Canadian and a guy who apparently I look like the after photo. Like looking at us on a screen together, I was just like, they don't start smoking. What's
I need
that?
to get a few more tattoos. I got to catch up with the tattoos. Now I'm not competing. I can just go buck wild with the I'll be Mike Van Wyck with a full head hereafter,
Dude, I've been like Walmart Mike Van Wyck for a while. Dude, I don't know how he finds the time or when he found the time. It's like I got 14 hours in the chair last week, and it's just like I still look like an altar boy next to Mike. And I was just like, you know what? Maybe I should just. I still got both my.
I appreciate what you said there, and I think it's something that, like, look, I'm not trying to motivate anyone to stop bodybuilding. I love bodybuilding. It created a great life for me. I appreciate everything that I did, but I think if what I did and anyone already had the inkling of their mind and they feel stuck and they feel like, I don't know what to do after, is life going to end after bodybuilding? Is my identity going to be gone? Like that, there's so many other awesome things to do out there, and you don't need to wait to the point where you're forced out of it. You don't need to wait till your blood work's so bad that your cardiologist is saying, you got to hang this up, man, or you're one shot away from a complete blockage, or where you've torn every damn muscle in your body, and what's the next 50 years of your life going to look like? Are you going to be able to do anything from a physical standpoint after bodybuilding? And I think that's just one thing I really want to reiterate to people is you can go out when you want to go out, and look, some guys don't want to go out at all, so they'll still stay there till the bitter end. But I know that's not everyone. I know a lot of bodybuilders that feel stuck in this pursuit, and they're like, fuck, I want to do other things, but like, this is all I know. And, people are going to look at me differently. Am I going to lose my contracts? And I can tell you firsthand, that's not the case. There's so many other cool things to do out there. And look, bodybuilding is awesome, but there's so many other physical pursuits that are fucking awesome too, And I think if you're someone that's kind of on the fence with that, just know that there is a whole life after bodybuilding and a lot of cool things to do. And then you don't need to wait till the point that you're forced out of the sport by injury, or that you're, slugging it along and you're now placing like dead last at shows, but you're like, I still got one more in me, I think that, you can make this decision for you, and make it based off of what you feel and what you want. And it doesn't need to be a forceful exit,
Oh man, I appreciate that. We'll close on it, dude. I won't take up any more of your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out and chat and kind of talk about it. And good luck with everything, and hopefully catch you next time you're down in Toronto.